Clay Ridge, Wyoming, summer of 1875. The sun beat down like judgment, casting long, merciless shadows across the cracked earth of the town square. Clay Ridge wore its civility like a drunk wore his Sunday best poorly, and only when watched. In the center of the square, a wooden platform loomed high, not for speeches or cattle auctions, but for shaming. A punishment dressed up in law. The crowd pressed in, murmuring with anticipation. Merchants, miners, women in pressed skirts and cruel mouths. They had come not for justice, but for a show. On that stage stood a woman who was neither criminal nor innocent, just unfortunate. Maria Gray, wrists loosely tied, her dress crumpled and stained from too many nights on borrowed floors. 25 years old, widowed 5 years, childless, luckless, and out of options. This here is Maria Gray, the auctioneer bellowed. Debtor, litigator, and failed wife. Up for bid by court order, to pay what she owes this town. The crowd jeered. Tried suing the mine after her husband got crushed in shaft 3. One man sneered. Thought her tears were made of gold. Another barked. She's barren, a woman hissed. 5 years and no baby. She's God's mistake. And Clay Ridge's burden. Maria stared straight ahead. She'd sold everything to fight the mine after her husband died, the house, the ring, even her good name. She'd borrowed from everyone she could. She'd lost, and now they were auctioning her off like livestock to settle a debt no one ever intended her to pay. $5, the auctioneer barked, for a good pair of hands, a sharp mind, and a mouth that knows too much. Silence. Then laughter. To Skinny, she'll snap like a twig. Useless womb. Someone shouted. Maria didn't flinch. Let them spill their venom. Let them rot in it. Then came hoof beats. Slow, deliberate, from the eastern road. A tall man on horseback emerged, 6 children trailing behind, some mounted, others walking. Leather and earth-colored cloth cloaked them. Comanche. The man dismounted, face weathered like desert rock, his expression unreadable. The townsfolk stiffened. What's that redskin want? Ain't his kind's place here. He didn't answer, just walked toward the platform, children behind him like shadows. The youngest, a girl barely 5, waved shyly at Maria. He stopped in front of the auctioneer. I offer my horse, he said simply, gesturing to a sleek Appaloosa. The square erupted in laughter. A horse for her. She ain't worth a spit bucket. The auctioneer studied him. Name, Lone Elk. Why her? She's a lawsuit, a debt, a barren shell. Lone Elk looked at Maria. I have 6 children. They need warmth, kindness. I don't need more blood. I need someone to keep them whole. The crowd fell silent. Anyone else want a bid? Nothing. Trade accepted. Take her and get gone before nightfall. Maria's wrists were freed. The rope had burned her skin. She stepped down slowly, the crowd parting like she carried plague. Lone Elk didn't offer a hand. He just waited. She looked at him, then the children. The youngest girl smiled, hope shining from her face. Maria took his hand, not because she believed in salvation, but because she had nothing left to lose. They left together, not as master and property, but as to people the world had tried to discard. The trail wound through tall grass and silence. Maria rode the Appaloosa, Lone Elk walking ahead. The children followed. Not one spoke, not one questioned. By sundown, they reached the edge of Comanche territory. A small home waited, wooden and modest but clearly tended, firewood stacked neatly, a wind chime of feathers whispering. Lone Elk opened the door. This way, inside. The house was spare. A hearth, a pine table, bedrolls in corners. He pointed to a curtained space. You sleep there, alone. Thank you. He looked at her, not harshly, but with a guarded weight. You are not their mother. You are here for steadiness. Behind him, the children peeked in, whispering, wondering, is she staying? She smells like Mama, Lone Elk answered. She stays because you need what I alone cannot give. She is not mother. She is not enemy. Dinner was quiet. Maria cooked stew with dried meat and squash. One boy added too much salt, testing her. She said nothing, just stirred. Later, she ate without flinching. The boy stared. That night, after the fire dimmed, she lay behind the curtain. The little girl patted in silently, dragging a doll, and curled up beside her. "You smell like my mama." Maria tucked the blanket around her, across the room. Lone Elk stood in shadow, watching. She closed her eyes. For the first time in months, she didn't dream of falling. She dreamed of being seen. The next morning, Lone Elk told her to ride with them to cut wood. Maria was surprised. She thought she'd be left behind. He handed her a water skin. She rode behind Q1. They moved in silence, up into the hills. They found a slope of deadfall trees. Lone Elk handed out axes. He warned her, "Stay close. The ground is loose." She nodded. They worked, axes biting wood. Maria gathered kindling. Sweat streaked her temple. She stepped onto a higher slope. Her foot slipped. Gravel gave way. She cried out, tumbled. Lone Elk reached her first, caught her before she slid too far. His hands were firm. "Steady. You all right?" She nodded. "Next time, don't wear riding shoes into mountains." His tone was dry, but his eyes lingered. The storm came fast. Rain lashed down before they reached the horses. Nathan spotted a cliffside split. A cave. Inside. They huddled. Ezra shivered. Maria struck a match, kindled flame. She wrapped her dress over his shoulders. "Storms pass," she whispered. "Breathe. With me." Lone Elk watched. Something in his face shifted. Later, Nathan murmured, "She listens." Mother did too. Lone Elk said nothing, but his gaze never left Maria. That night, Ezra fell ill. Fever burned him. Maria didn't sleep. She sponged his forehead, whispered comfort. "Mom," he murmured. "No," she said softly. "Just someone who won't leave." Lone Elk saw. He brought her willow bark broth, touched her shoulder. "Elizabeth," he said quietly, "cried like that when Koa almost died. I'm not her. I didn't ask you to be." She trembled. "If I'm just a shadow of her, then I would not have panicked when you fell. I wouldn't have watched your hands, wondered about your voice." She couldn't speak. Ezra stirred. Maria settled beside him, exhausted. Lone Elk covered her with a blanket, sat beside the hearth. He didn't sleep, just watched, choosing. By noon the next day, a knock came. For elders, one woman, a pony, stepped forward, face tight. "You brought a white woman." Without counsel. She had nowhere. "She is not one of us. She never claimed to be." A pony accused. "She teaches them English, stories of queens." Maria met her gaze. "I teach what they'll face. Laws written by men who won't care who they are. They need both tongues." The elders conferred. A pony asked the children, "Has she made you proud or ashamed?" They hesitated. Nathan crossed his arms. "She helps with our letters." Ezra whispered. "She never mocks. She says our songs are beautiful," said the youngest. Not all spoke. Not all trusted. The elders left, without blessing. Whispers followed Maria. Doubt crept in. The children grew distant. Only the youngest clung close. That night, Maria spoke. "I'm not your mother, not Comanche. I know I'm not enough, but I'm not your enemy." Lone Elk watched from the doorway. "I teach you so you can fight with knowledge, not weapons." Then a rock hit the wall. Another shattered the shutters. Maria shielded the children. Lone Elk stormed out. 3 young men waited. One was an elder's son, one a pony's kin. "She dirties your house." Lone Elk didn't speak. He struck the nearest with a single blow. The boy dropped like a stone. He would not let them harm what he had begun to protect. Not his blood, but perhaps his heart. Clay Ridge, Wyoming, summer of 1875. The sun was a tyrant, carving deep, merciless shadows across the cracked earth of the town square. Clay Ridge upheld its veneer of civility, as poorly as a drunk clutches a Bible fragmented and forgotten, unless closely watched. In the center of that square stood a wooden platform, not for auctions of cattle or fiery speeches, but for punishment masquerading as lawful order. A crowd thrummed with morbid anticipation, merchants, miners, women in stiff skirts and sharper tongues, all gathering for a spectacle of judgment. Maria Gray stood on that platform, neither guiltless nor guilty, only a convenient scapegoat. Her wrists were loosely bound, her dress rumpled and faded after nights spent on borrowed floors. She was 25, a widow for 5 years, barren and unbearably unlucky. "This here is Maria Gray," the auctioneer roared. "Debtor, litigator. and failed wife up for bid by court order to repay what she owes this town. The crowd responded with snorts of scorn. She tried suing the mine after her husband died. One man snarled, thought her tears were gold. Another jeered, she's barren 5 years, no child. She's God's mistake and Clay Ridges. Burden, a woman hissed. Maria didn't blink. Her husband had perished under a failed timber in Shaft 3. She'd pawned everything house. Ring and borrowed relentlessly to hire a Cheyenne lawyer. She had demanded justice. She had lost. For her inability to repay, she was now being auctioned off, her body serving as currency. $5 to start for a good set of hands, a sharp mind, and a mouth that knows too much. The auctioneer hollered. Silence. Then laughter. 2. Skinny. Someone jeered. She'll break before breakfast. Useless womb. Another spat. Even her husband couldn't plant seed in her. Maria swallowed, posture rigid with pride. Asterisk asterisk, let them spew their bile. Let it rot them from within. Asterisk asterisk, hoof beats came then slow, deliberate from the eastern road. The crowd tilted, uncertain. Into view rode a tall man, followed by 6 children. Some perched majestically on ponies, others trailing on foot. Soft leather cloaked them. Earth-hued cloth whispered of Comanche ancestry. Silent respect fell. The tall man dismounted. His weathered face, chiseled by sun and hardship, showed neither fear nor apology. He tied his horse and walked toward the platform, children trailing like shadows. "What's that savage doing here?" whispered a miner. "He don't belong," another snorted. He ignored them, walking straight to Maria, eyes locked on hers. The little girl of 5 inched forward and managed a small wave. Maria's heart clenched. The man stepped before the auctioneer, voice calm. "I offer my horse in exchange for her." The crowd erupted with scorn. "For that?" One rancher barked. "You want your saddle too? She ain't worth manure." An old woman spat. But the tall man Lone Elk stood unmoved. He pointed to a strong Appaloosa tied nearby, its coat gleaming with vitality. The auctioneer arched an eyebrow. "Name, Lone Elk. What do you want with her? She's no good." "A lawsuit, a debt, and Barren." Lone Elk looked directly at Maria. The fierceness of his gaze softened. "I have 6 children. They need warmth, kindness. I don't need her body to make more. I need her spirit, to keep them whole." Silence. The auctioneer looked around. The crowd fell still, ashamed. "No one here can top a horse," he murmured. "Eventually, trade accepted. Take her and be gone before nightfall." Maria's rope was cut, the rough burn against her skin forgotten. She climbed down the platform. The crowd parted as if she carried plague. Lance Elk held his ground, waiting. She looked at him, then at the children, especially the youngest, whose eyes glowed with hope. Maria took his hand. They walked away together, not as owner and owned, but as 2 souls cast aside, choosing to carry each other. Their ride through high grass was silent, but intimate. Maria perched on the Appaloosa, reins loose, her grip almost trusting. Lone Elk led the way. The children followed solemnly, without question. As dusk draped itself over the prairie, they reached the edge of Comanche land. A small wooden house stood tucked by a ridge well tended, its porch swept, firewood stacked, a wind chime of bones and feathers whispering across the breeze. Lone Elk dismounted and beckoned her inside. Maria slid from the saddle, tension unraveling from her body. The children hovered at the door, wary but curious. The house was spare but warm, a central hearth, a pine-carved table, bedding in corners, herbs hanging from the ceiling, and a bold mountain painted on one wall. Lone Elk pointed to a curtained corner. "You sleep there, alone." "Thank you," Maria said softly. His glance was neither cold nor warming, it was neutral, measured. "You are not here to replace anyone. They had a mother. You are here because they need stability." Small feet shuffled, whispers passing, as the children made observations. "Is she staying? Is she like Mama?" Their voices softened her heart. Lone Elk said quietly, without turning, "She stays because you need more than I can give. She's not your mother but not your enemy." Dinner was subdued dried meat, beans, squash. Maria cooked carefully, measuredly. The second youngest boy dropped too much salt in her stew and watched her. Expectant, she said nothing, stirred, served it, ate it with calm endurance. The boy stared. She returned his gaze calmly and offered him bread. Lone Elk watched. He said nothing, but his attention lingered later. After the children were tucked beneath the fire's dying glow, Maria retreated behind the curtain. A small rustle, then a tiny hand slid through. The youngest girl, dragging a battered doll, climbed in beside Maria and whispered, "You smell like my mama." Maria froze, then gently tucked the blanket around her and closed her eyes. She didn't dream of fire or rope that night. Instead, she knew 6 pairs of eyes were watching some with silent hope. Morning wind was sharp as Lone Elk announced they were going to cut wood. Maria expected to stay home, tending hearth and herb, so she was surprised when he handed her a waterskin and nodded to the horse. "We cut wood." She rode behind Q1, the second oldest. Silent among them, they climbed into pine-etched hills. Maria tried to breathe the silence, to claim belonging through stillness. They found fallen trees strewn down a slope. Lone Elk passed out axes. He warned, "Stay close, the ground is loose." They worked in rhythm, axes biting wood, branches snapping. Maria stacking kindling and wiping sweat with her sleeve. She stepped near a log perched above and her boots slid. Gravel tumbled. She cried out as she toppled. Lone Elk was at her side before the boys moved. He caught her in a strong hold before she could tumble further. "Are you all right?" he murmured. Maria nodded, breath heavy, an abrasion bleeding at her elbow. "Next time," he said dryly, "don't wear riding shoes into the mountains." Their eyes met, steady. He helped her stand, and she stayed near. Clouds crept across the ridge by midday. Thunder rumbled. Lone Elk frowned. "We go now." Rain hit before they reached the horses. They sprinted under an overhanging cave. Maria's fingers were numb. Ezra, the youngest, shivered violently. Maria struck a match. Flame caught on dry bark hidden in her dress. Warmth hissed to life. She draped her skirt over Ezra's shoulders. "It's okay," she whispered. "Storms pass. Breathe with me." His wet lips curled in a faint smile. Lone Elk watched at the cave's mouth, rain tracing his stoic profile, and for a moment, his face softened. Later, Nathan spoke through rain's echo. "She listens." "Mama did too." Lone Elk said nothing, but he watched Maria closely. The storm passed. Ezra's shivering gave way to a fever. Maria pressed a hand to his brow. "He's too warm," she whispered. Lone Elk nodded, hard lines softening. He had sickness like this before can turn. He gathered roots, herbs, boiled bark. Maria did not wait to be told. She sponged. Ezra fanned him, whispered comfort in broken English and Comanche. The fever raged. "Mom?" Ezra called in a whisper. Maria froze. "No, sweetheart," she answered. "I'm just someone who won't leave." Lone Elk crossed the room and handed her willow bark broth. He set a gentle hand on her shoulder. "My wife Elizabeth," he said quietly, "cried like that when Koa nearly died. I remember how she would not sleep." Maria braced herself, voice tight. "I am not here to replace her." His gaze remained steady. "I didn't ask you to." Her breath was ragged. "If I'm just a shadow, if you were," he cut in softly, "I would not have panicked when you fell. I wouldn't have watched your hands by the fire. I'd never wonder what your voice might have sounded like singing." She couldn't answer, just watched Ezra's breathing ease. She stayed beside him, and Lone Elk covered her with a blanket. He did not sleep. He simply stayed. In the dawn's first pale light, he was still there watching her. No longer fear in his expression. Something quiet, something choosing. They woke to a sharp knock. 4 elders, silver-braided men and a woman in red shawls, a pony. "May we enter?" asked the eldest. Lone Elk stepped aside. Maria stirred a pot of corn mash by the hearth. The children stiffened. Silence stretched. "You have brought a white woman into our lands without counsel," said the elder. "She was taken from the town." Lone Elk answered firmly. "She had nowhere else to go. She is not of our people." Claimed nothing. "Your children speak Comanche and call her mother." A pony accused. "She teaches them English kings, Western queens." Maria looked up, voice steady. "I teach them what they'll face. Laws beyond these hills are written in English by men who don't care who they are. They need both tongues not betrayed." The elders exchanged weighing glances. A pony asked the children, Has she made you proud or ashamed? Whispers, Nathan spoke. She helps with our letters, Ezra said. She never mocks what we know. The little girl added, she says, our songs are beautiful. Not every child spoke, and not every heart trusted her. Lines formed the moment she arrived. The elders left without words, without blessing. Days turned colder. At the spring, whispers followed Maria. Children averted their eyes. Conan withheld flowers. Ezra and Nathan grew distant until only the youngest stayed close. Clinging, that night Maria spoke before the fire. I never came to replace anyone. I'm not your mother. I'm not Comanche. I know I'm not enough, but I am not your enemy. Lone Elk watched in the doorway. I teach you knowledge, so you learn to fight without a weapon. She said. A rock smashed the wall. Another shattered the shutters. The children screamed. Maria shielded the youngest. Lone Elk stormed outside. 3 young men prepared to strike. The son of an elder, Aponi's nephew. She dirties our house. One yelled. She turns our blood to dust. Another spat. Lone Elk didn't hesitate. He punched the nearest boy in the face. The youth dropped. The others fled. If you ever throw stones again, Lone Elk growled, you answer to more than my fists. Inside, Maria held the children, trembling when he returned, cheek cut. Fists bloodied. He did not speak. He sat by the hearth. You'll be cast out for this, she whispered. He met her gaze. Fierce, I will not be alone. 3 months passed. Their wooden house stood firm. The earth softened around it. Grass grew tall, and something unspoken bloomed, a quiet resilience. Maria no longer bore the silhouette of a traded woman. She soothed Ezra's fevers, comforted Nathan's nightmares, quieted broken hearts. She hummed lullabies when coyotes cried. Lone Elk no longer observed from the distance. He waited for her by the river, by the window, and took her hand without ceremony. There were no vows, no priest, just shared laughter, and wood cracked in the fire. One autumn morning Maria knelt by the creek, arms in water. Her body betrayed her. Tenderness curved around her belly. A gasp of nausea stole her breath. Her hands stilled on the cool earth. No, she whispered, it's not possible. But the next day, her steps slowed. She paled. Concern flickered in his eyes. We go to Nessa, he said. She tried to deny it, but he wouldn't relent. Nessa pressed her belly, then said, you are with child. Maria shook her head. No, I cannot be. I was told I was barren. Her voice broke. Nessa offered quiet comfort as Maria heard the hope she had long suppressed. The ride home was silent, heavy with unspoken fear. Night came. She sat by the fire, fists clenched. In her belly, a sentence once condemning her now stirred alive. What terrified her most was not the birth but the confession. What if he loved her only because of what she carried? What if love based on need would crumble once the child arrived? So Maria didn't speak truth. Instead, she whispered lullabies as her hands rested on the swelling beneath her skirt. The children unaware laughed and ran. The youngest girl clung to her, giggling. Maria felt a tenderness in her chest, a new life, a trust she never expected. And outside, Lone Elk crafted names for this unborn child in his mind. At dawn, a summons arrived, deer skin laced with red twine, the color of life-altering choice. He's called me to council, Lone Elk announced. Maria stiffened. The village had seen her belly. I'll go with you. He blinked and nodded. The council sat beneath the great cedar, elders, warriors, women of wisdom, a pony watching. Thahu. An elder spoke. You bring this white woman into our circle. After all we know. Lone Elk's face tightened. She harms no one. The child is mixed blood and claimed by our rights. But I defended my heart. Before he could speak more, Maria stepped forward, voice trembling but resolute. Don't blame him. This is mine to claim. I'm not of your people. I learned. Your soil, your songs, your fears, never claimed them, but lived beside them. I believed I was broken, but I wasn't. I was just unloved. Until here. She paused, looking at Lone Elk. Do not lose your place for what I carry. The council murmured. Then Lone Elk stood, voice strong yet gentle. She is not of our blood, and our child will not be either. But she gave my children more than blood could. Love returned, forgiveness, healing. She never needed to bear a child to be a mother, but she did it anyway. The circle was silent until Nathan stepped forward, fists clenched. If you send her away, I go too. This is my mother now, Ezra, and the youngest joined. Each claim a breath that reshaped the world. Lone Elk spoke firm, do what you must. But I will not leave her. I will not make my children choose between blood and heart. A quiet descended. Then the midwife, silver-haired and wise, whispered, blood gives life, but heart keeps it. No one spoke again. That night, Maria labored under the midwife's care, Lone Elk behind her, steady as stone, words a steady breath. Then her cry cut through night's hush, life riving, fierce and pure. The baby was wrapped in deer skin and laid in her arms. He was tiny, red, perfect, framed by her tears and his father's trembling touch. He's real, she breathed. He is, Lone Elk whispered. At dawn the children burst in, voices a chorus of fresh love. He's so small, gasped the youngest. Meet your brother, Maria announced, voice shining. One by one the children held him, reverent. He's ours, said Ezra proudly. That evening, copper sky overhead. The harvest festival crowned the day. Drums and laughter circled the fire. Corn and pine filled the air. Maria sat beneath the moonlight, newborn sleeping, wrapped in a midwife's woven blanket. Lone Elk took her hand and nodded to the circle. Together, they stepped forward. He announced, this is Maria, a stranger once, now a caregiver, warrior spirit, mother. I did not take her by right or law but by love. She is my wife, not by paper, but by fire and shared life. Silence broke into murmurs of acceptance, laughter and applause echoing through the night. Weeks passed. Fields grew amber. Maria sat beneath the cottonwood tree with pen in hand, fingers still tender from childbirth, writing, I was once traded for a horse, now I am mother to 7, a wife without ceremony, a teacher, a singer, a keeper of fire. I needed not blood to belong but to be seen and to stay. Across the field Lone Elk taught Ezra to string a bow. The younger lined arrows. The youngest chased chickens laughing in the sunshine. The house stood sure. Maria's heart beat steady, drum of a family found. She smiled. Love had come not from vows, but from staying, choosing again and again. In wild frontier where names slip away, truths endure. Family is made by those who choose us, even when no law claims us. Maria was once empty, now in the eyes of her children. In the ring of that house she had become legend. A story whispered on Comanche winds of a woman who stayed, who loved, who carried them all home.